Welcome to Module 5, Section 10 of your California Contractor License Exam Prep course. In this lesson, we'll be covering insulation, its types, where and how it's installed, and the energy standards that regulate it in California residential remodeling. For B2 contractors, insulation is a core remodeling task, and understanding how to do it properly and legally can significantly improve a home's comfort, energy efficiency, and code compliance. Let's get into how to install it, where it's required, and how Title 24 plays a critical role in how insulation must be evaluated and documented. As a B2 residential remodeling contractor, you are authorized to install insulation in existing homes during remodeling projects. This includes thermal insulation in walls, attics, floors, and crawl spaces, as well as acoustic insulation where sound control is needed. However, it's important to remember that you cannot install insulation in new structural framing if the framing itself was outside your license scope. Anytime you're insulating as part of a non-structural remodel, such as updating a kitchen, replacing drywall, or finishing an attic, you're fully allowed to include insulation work. You're also allowed to upgrade insulation in previously insulated spaces, such as adding blown-in cellulose or bats to older walls, so long as no structural framing is being modified. There are several types of insulation you'll commonly encounter. Fiberglass bats are the most familiar to most contractors. They're easy to install, relatively inexpensive, and available in various R values to meet code requirements. Bats are pre-cut to fit between standard framing dimensions, making them ideal for remodeling projects where the framing is exposed. Installation involves placing the bats snugly between the studs or joists without compressing them, as compressed insulation loses effectiveness. Care must be taken not to block ventilation paths, particularly in attic installations where soffit and ridge vents are present. Next is blown-in insulation, which is made of fiberglass or cellulose and installed with a machine. This type is often used to top off attic insulation or to fill wall cavities through small access holes, especially when the wall finish remains intact. Blown-in insulation is especially useful in retrofit scenarios where you're trying to improve energy performance without major demolition. It's also used in open attics to bring insulation levels up to current standards. Foam board insulation, often made of polystyrene or polyisocyanurate, is used in walls, ceilings, and foundations where space is limited, but higher R values are needed. These rigid panels must be cut to fit and are often used in conjunction with other insulation methods. Spray foam insulation is another method that creates an air and moisture barrier, but it usually requires specialized equipment and may be outside the scope of work for a B2 contractor unless prepackaged kits are used in limited applications. California's Title 24 Building Energy Efficiency Standards are the most important regulatory framework guiding insulation requirements. These standards are mandatory statewide and are updated every few years. They determine the minimum required insulation levels based on the building's location in one of California's 16 climate zones. For example, in much of coastal California, walls are required to be insulated to at least R13 or R15, while attics might require R30 or more. The current standards often require a combination of cavity insulation within framing and continuous insulation across framing to reduce thermal bridging. It's essential that you confirm which climate zone your project is in and use insulation that meets or exceeds the required R values. This applies not just to new construction, but also to remodels where drywall is being removed and the framing cavity is exposed. In those cases, Title 24 requires that the new cavity be insulated to current standards, not to whatever existed before. So if you open a wall during a kitchen remodel and see there's no insulation or outdated material like newspaper or vermiculite, you're required to bring that section up to code before closing the wall again. You must also pay close attention to installation quality. California's Quality Insulation Installation, QI, standards are part of the Title 24 Energy Code and focus on how insulation is installed, not just what type you use. For example, bats must completely fill each cavity without gaps, voids, or compression. If the cavity includes wiring or plumbing, you're expected to split the bat around the obstruction so both sides of the cavity are filled. Around windows and doors, small gaps should be filled with low expansion foam or bat scraps, not left empty. Poor insulation work can result in failed inspections or energy documentation problems down the line. Another major consideration is air sealing. Although insulation is critical, it doesn't stop air leaks. That's why sealing penetrations in the building envelope, such as around plumbing pipes, electrical wires, and attic access hatches, is required to maximize the effectiveness of insulation. In many remodels, especially those that require permits, you'll need to show compliance with both insulation and air sealing standards. This may be verified during inspection or through energy documentation using a HERS, Home Energy Rating System, radar. If you're installing insulation as part of a permitted remodel, the building inspector will typically want to see it before drywall is hung. This is the time to document your work. Take clear photos of the insulation installed in walls, floors, and ceilings, showing proper placement and material labeling. Save receipts for the material used, including R value and manufacturer information, and ensure that all packaging is left on site until the inspector gives final sign-off. Insulation also plays a role in indoor air quality and occupant health. Many modern insulation materials are made with low VC binders and recycled content. You should prioritize materials that carry certifications such as GRE and GURD or UL's Environmental Claim Validation to ensure that your insulation doesn't introduce harmful chemicals into the home. This is especially important in tightly sealed, energy-efficient homes where air exchanges are limited. Communicate your product choices to the client, especially if they have sensitivities or concerns. Acoustic insulation is another opportunity for B2 contractors. While not required by code in most cases, soundproofing insulation can be a strong upsell in shared walls, bathrooms, laundry rooms, and bedrooms. Mineral wool or high-density fiberglass are often used in these scenarios to reduce airborne sound transmission. Again, this is fully within your scope and can be marketed as part of a premium remodeling package. In summary, insulation is a critical and visible part of your work as a B2 contractor. You're authorized to install most types of insulation in residential remodels, provided no structural work is involved. You must comply with California's Title 24 Energy Code, understand required R values by climate zone, and install materials to QI standards. Air sealing, product selection, inspection procedures, and indoor air quality are all important considerations. When done right, insulation increases comfort, reduces energy bills, and protects your client's investment, making it one of the most valuable upgrades in any remodeling project.